Welcome to Vital Voices of the Environment, a Marstel-Day production. The following is an interview with Congresswoman Barbara Lee. We were able to catch up with her between votes and committee hearings in the Rayburn House Office Building, and she shared her thoughts with us on vital environmental issues of the day. Congresswoman Barbara Lee was first elected to represent California's 9th Congressional District in 1998. A member of the powerful House Appropriations Committee, Congresswoman Lee serves on the Labor, Health and Human Services, Education, the State and Foreign Operations, and the Financial Services subcommittees. Additionally, she serves on the Foreign Affairs Committee, on the subcommittees on Western Hemisphere and Africa and Global Health. Congresswoman Lee was sworn in as the chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus, CBC, on January 6, 2009. Congresswoman Lee's accomplishments in promoting effective bipartisan legislation to stop the spread of HIV, AIDS, and bring treatment to the infected have earned her international recognition as a leader in the fight against global HIV/AIDS. Congresswoman Lee's willingness to stand on principle earned her international acclaim when she was the only member of Congress to vote against giving President Bush a blank check to wage war after the September 11th attacks. In addition to being one of Congress's most vocal opponents to the war in Iraq, Congresswoman Lee has been a leader in promoting policies that foster international peace, security, and human rights. In 2006, she successfully blocked funds from being used to establish permanent military bases in Iraq. She sponsored legislation disavowing the doctrine of preemptive war and has been a leader in the bipartisan effort in Congress to end the ongoing genocide in Darfur, Sudan, including the passage of legislation she authored to allow divestment from companies doing business in the region. As co-chair of the Congressional Out of Poverty Caucus, Congresswoman Lee is committed to eradicating poverty, fostering opportunity, and protecting the most vulnerable in our society. Her resolution affirming the goal of cutting the poverty rate in half within 10 years was passed by Congress in 2008. California's 9th Congressional District encompasses most of Alameda County, including the cities of Albany, Ashland, Berkeley, Castro Valley, Cherryville, Emeryville, Fairview, Oakland, and Piedmont. Born in El Paso, Texas, Congresswoman Lee graduated from Mills College in Oakland and received her MSW from the University of California, Berkeley. She began her political career as an intern in the office of her predecessor, former Congressman Ron Dellums. Before being elected to Congress, she served in the California State Assembly from 1990 to 1996 and in the California State Senate from 1996 to 1998. Thank you for being with us, Congresswoman. Yours has been a path of constant vigilance in standing up for the causes that you believe in. You've been a tireless advocate for peace and security, a crusader against poverty and disease, a fighter for health care and education. To what extent have environmental issues been in any of those contexts for you?
I want to share this with you early on because one of the questions has to do about the progression of my life. I was born in El Paso, Texas. Now, there's never been a direct relationship between pollutants and the environmental hazards of living in the neighborhood we lived in, but I know that it was as a result of those smelters in El Paso and that smoke and all that garbage that we were breathing that created the health conditions for my schoolmates. At least 7 or 8 of them have died. My sister has MS. And when you look at that neighborhood where I lived in El Paso, Texas, it was a disease-filled neighborhood. And those smelters, I know, is a reason for that. And so that's kind of how I come to this. And my mother and my grandfather as a child used to talk about that and how bad the air was. My grandfather constantly had bronchitis. You know, my mother has a bronchial condition, and we all used to talk about it, but it was nothing we could do because that's where we lived. But come to find out, of course, it was in the Latino and black communities where we lived, and this is where they cited those smelters.
What do you think today are the most significant environmental issues in your district, big picture, and what do you think are the next steps that you would want to take in dealing with them?
Of course, climate change, big picture. We have to address climate change in the legislation that we passed, even though it wasn't the best with cap and trade and, you know, all of that. I mean, I think I'd prefer to see a carbon tax and other more robust standards and what have you. It passed with cap and trade. It's stuck now in the Senate, and we need to get at least that bill done.
Okay.
Long-term, big picture. My district is very committed to addressing climate change in a big way and getting this energy bill to the president's desk. On a smaller level, and just terms of my district specifically, I mean, once again, West Oakland, high incidence of lung cancer, asthma. We have issues with the port and the truckers going through now after they built the new freeways. And so there are areas in my district that are just as unhealthy as the areas when I lived in El Paso. And so these are big issues. We have a huge incidence of children's asthma in the schools, public schools, especially in West Oakland.
Okay.
And so we have to address it from a public health standpoint, and in addition from the bigger picture in terms of climate change.
So there again, environment is embedded in pretty much everything that you do.
Yeah, it's an issue of environmental justice because it has been so unjust in the past. When you're black, when you're Latino, when you're Asian, when you're poor in America, you're subjected to the environmental racism, really, is what it is.
And moving even bigger picture to the nation as a whole, would you say the environmental problems you just identified scale well to the nation as a whole, or are they also different issues?
No, I think they scale well. I think in the South, when you look at what's going on, we've taken, and actually as chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, we talked to Lisa Jackson, who's the administrator of EPA. And she's a wonderful administrator. She really gets it. And so she is working with us to go into areas now to look at all of the climate change and environmental issues. And so our first visit was to Mississippi. Same issues as in Oakland. And so, I think one of the big issues that we have to address is educating communities of color about the bigger issues on climate change.
Is it more difficult somehow to reach communities of color on climate issues?
Yeah, I think it is because they see the historically white liberal environmental movement as caring more about the polar bears than people. And so, yeah, but I think we're making some progress. We have an energy task force, a green task force of the Congressional Black Caucus, and we brought together every 3 months like 200 and 300 African Americans from around the country to talk about climate change, global warming, green industry, what we can do. And so we're beginning to make a lot of progress in communities of color now.
Well, that, in a sense, speaks to part of the next question about your leadership and how will you use your leadership to demonstrate an environmental commitment, if you will, going forward?
That's, what can I say? It's just you got to work. You got to work to do it. You got to put together the coalition. You got to educate people. You got to develop policies and procedures. You have to really, how would I say? You have to really be on the cutting edge and bring people along with you, just like with the CBC, the Green Roundtable, Green Task Force. I mean, that's hard, but you got to do it to help people understand why you got to do it. So it's the hard work, and people pull together and follow once they see the reality of why we have to do this.